Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us on The Late Show. I say us, that's Tim, Vince and myself. Good evening, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, you did say us.
Yes.
US.
Well, I want to say, it's, how many times do I open up and I haven't got a scripture, and the minute that music starts for The Late Show, something comes up. And it's just amazing. I mean, it's no coincidence, it's a God incidence. Yeah, I believe that. I'm just looking at Numbers, chapter 15, verse 1, really, basically. We're talking about the history of the nation of Israel and the Jews, or whatever you want to call them. These are the chosen people, all sorts of names that have been aligned to the Jewish people. Now, what does this say in the very first verse of chapter 15? It says, "Now the Lord spoke to Moses." And what did he say? Okay, remember what period was Moses, roughly?
That's a great question. It was it was after Abraham. Abraham was 4,000 years ago. So sort of basically a couple of hundred years after.
After that, were they had the 400 years of enslavement.
Years, so maybe 3,500.
Yeah. And then Moses was the one that was to redeem them from their bondage of 400 years enslavement to the Egyptians.
So maybe 3,500 years ago.
Yeah, there you go, approximately. Okay, now what did the Lord say to Moses?
He said, are you talking about the one where he wanted to strike out the people?
No. I mean, it was a bit of a silly question in a way, because he said lots of things to Moses. Yeah. But one of the things that jumps off the page to me, and I think it's very pertinent for us to be looking at tonight, because of the history of the nation of Israel, how long ago, etc., says, "Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you enter the land where you are going to live," okay, it's a permanent sort of thing, "which I am giving you," and then it goes on and on and on. So Moses was told by the Lord God, the creator of heaven and earth, the owner of the earth, the owner of the land, this is where the people of Israel are going to live, that I am giving you. He didn't give it to the Palestinians, with all due respect. He didn't give it to the Arabs, with all due respect. He didn't give it to the Mongolians. He didn't give it to the Russians. He didn't give it to any other people group, whatever they were called in those days, okay? There was all sorts of names, and some of them, were, if you like, bands of pretty evil people. And I would say that the nation of Israel was brought into and under the control, if you like, of the Creator God. So he disciplined them, he led them out of bondage, and he led them into the promised land. And it says, "This is the land I will give you." And we're talking 3,000 or more years ago. And this has become more, important as we go through tonight's study. I do have a day job as well as a night job, and I just got here by the seat of my pants again tonight, having prepared a little bit of a meal for you, in looking at what is being taught to the children, the Palestinian children. I think this is quite sad, what you're going to be watching, and it's nothing to do with the state of their bodies, or their, if you like, the vulnerability that they're probably going through right now living in Gaza, but really what they've been taught and what is coming out of their mouths, which is something which will shock you. I really believe it will, of what their intentions are and what they've been taught. And who would have taught them these things?
Well, they've been exploited, from Arafat onwards, and they are victims of a warped history. So you mentioned, 3,500 years, 4,000 years, the promises to the Jewish people. Arafat knew that he didn't have a history, so he invented one, and he said that he was descended from the Canaanites. So at least he sort of was claiming that, something. I mean, they were a very evil people, by the way, the Canaanites. Am I allowed to say that in today's world?
Yes.
Because they were evil.
Why did God ask, Joshua actually to destroy everyone except Rahab?
There was child sacrifice. There was all sorts of evil things going on. And people say, "Oh, it's colonization. How terrible what Israel did." But actually, God set those people apart, gave them the land so that they would be holy unto him. And it's done the whole of human history quite a good turn, having the Jewish people around.
Yeah. You used a very important term there. There was child sacrifice.
Correct.
That was by the Canaanites all those years ago. Who is sacrificing their children today?
Hamas.
Right. Thank you.
And it goes back generations, which is the tragedy of the whole thing. If you go back, it was 1964, I think, when Nasser and Arafat cooked up an idea of Palestinian national identity. Before that, it didn't exist. Palestinians were Jews before that. So the whole modern politics of a state of Palestine can be probably rooted to Nasser. It could now go back with Hamas to the Muslim Brotherhood, that was founded in Ismailia, I think it was, in Egypt in the 30s.
Right. Well, what I'm going to do is change the order. Sorry, Mr. Producer in the back there. I'm going to change the order because we've talked about the children. I think if we show the video where the children are being indoctrinated to believe certain things which are totally untrue, and not factual at all, but also the hatred that these dear children, I've blurred them out because the children are innocent because they have been taught some horrific untruths, and also what they've been taught, you wouldn't want any child to come out and say the things that these children are saying. Yep. So let's look at this video first. It might set the scene, but before we do that, I want to say that we did have a sort of title, Free Palestine, from Hamas. Let me just say that. It's not from the river to the sea that you're going to set the Palestinians only in that land, but really Israel was there as a nation many thousands of years ago. We're going to look at that. But what we do need to know, or what I want you to know, is what they're inculcating into the children. Have a watch of this.
لأنه نعمل حرب إنه نفرجي اليهود إنه إحنا مش إنه إحنا مش شاطرين، إحنا قوايا كمان. في ناس بحبوا فلسطين بدهم يحاربوا وبضحوا بدمهم عشان فلسطين. أنا بدي أهزمهم بالحرب. بدي أهزمهم.
بيعلمونا إنه الأقصى إلنا وإلنا يعني الحق، يعني إلنا فلسطين والأراضي كلها إلنا، لأنهم بسبب كذبهم وانتهاكاتهم إنهم يقولون إنه الهيكل تحت المسجد الأقصى، ولا مرة إنه يكون الهيكل تحت المسجد الأقصى.
أنا بقرأ اليهود.
بعلمونا إن الصهيونية هم أعدائنا، وهم أهم إشي لازم يسوي فيهم عملية.
يعني انهم بيعلمونا بالمدرسه انهم ارهابيين
بيحكوا لنا عن اليهود انهم هدول مش منيح وهدول بقتلوا قاعدين بشبابنا. بيحكوا لنا هدول غدارين، وبيحكوا لنا انه هدول بغدرونا، هدول مش منيح. اذا بطعن بدعس عليهم. اعمل عمليات. كيف يعني؟ الدعس، عمليات الدعس، عمليات الطعن والاشتباك المسلح في المخيمات.
ايش اكيد هدول العمليات ترفع الراس ولفلسطين. العمليات هاي تاعت الدعس والسكاكين هاي اشي بيرفع الراس لفلسطين.
اذا بدك بطلع بستشهد عادي. انا ان شاء الله اساعد الشباب وان شاء الله اصير مقاوم بالمستقبل مع الدولة الإسلامية.
I'd like to know how you feel about that. Live at revelationtv.com. It's the email address, and the SMS is on your screen. I don't know what to say, Tim, really.
I don't know. Someone wrote this morning and said we don't have empathy. I have a lot of empathy for those children. I've given my whole life, really, to helping children be educated in the right way. Train up a child in the way he should go. Actually, the scripture says, in the way, and they will not depart from it. Well, if you train them up in a way of evil, I'm afraid they will end up as suicide bombers, full stop. And people say you shouldn't mention the Nazis because it's never been, it's such a horrific thing. But it is exactly what Josef Streicher, his name was. He was a Gauleiter of Nuremberg, and he formed the Nazi propaganda newspaper Der Stürmer. and he vilified and demonized the Jews. And in a modern way, they're doing exactly the same in so-called Palestine, and it's evil.
Yeah. I do say that we have to, pray for the children and pray for, how can you come against all of that evil thoughts and taught that have been taught to the children? I can't wait to stab a Jew when I grow up, or something like that, and this hatred, and to say that, it's totally provable that the temple that belonged to the Jews, which was built by Herod, is under the Alaska Mosque.
Exactly. I know people think, oh, I'm pushing it to the extreme, but I said to you just while that was being played, I don't like the term the Palestinian people or the people of Palestine. They're victims of a lie, which is that and this whole idea of developing Palestinian national identity and all of that, as I said, it started with Arafat. You've got to go to the roots of the problem. And I know it sounds extreme, but I felt the same with the EU many years ago. You've got to go to the spiritual root of it. And that is the root, I'm afraid. And it's been formed to eliminate the Jewish people in the whole land of Israel. That's why it was set up. The Palestinian Liberation Organization was to free what they term as Palestine, which is the whole of Israel, from the Jews.
Yeah. I do want to play, I think it's two segments that we have, which is called Pulse of Israel, which is an organization, looks like a one-man band actually, but he goes to all the trouble of trying to give an answer in defense of what Israel is doing in Gaza right now today. But some of the things that he mentions in the video that I'm going to show you are, something to take into account. When you think about, Tim, all the Arab states that we have in the world, across the world, we're going to be looking at a chart.
And they do have a history. The Arab states do have a history.
Yes.
I'm not denying, Arab identity, but the other lot, I'm afraid, it's a political ideology that's, as old as you.
Yeah, thank you. It is actually.
And you're in better shape.
1946.
Yeah.
I would say that it's worth looking at Pulse of Israel right now, because the Egyptian border is closed. And what this young man actually talks about, and you can see him and find him probably on YouTube as well, but we're using a few of his clips because they're so pertinent, I believe, to what is happening there today. Why is the southern border not open for the Palestinians to leave? It seems like they're held captive, as it were, to Hamas, who are hiding underneath in the tunnels, and their own people are actually going to be suffering because of things that happen, and because of Hamas has to be eliminated. That is the most important thing that most people who have any thoughts at all about a future for both people groups need to have recognized that Hamas needs to go. So as we look at the Egyptian border situation and why it's closed and why it's so hard for Israel to get their aid through.
Shalom, everybody. Here you are, a special field trip, Pulse of Israel, where we are on the Egyptian border. We are at the corner of Israel's border with Egypt and Israel's border with the Gaza Strip that hopefully one day won't be a border, because we're going to be in the Gaza Strip and it'll be part of Israel once again. In the meantime, this is the Kerem Shalom crossing. Right behind me is one of the walls, and it is here where trucks are brought from Israel into Gaza via this entrance with the humanitarian aid that is given to Hamas, that allows Hamas to continue fighting and killing us every day, right? That's what the world pressures us to do. And unfortunately, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's unfortunately smart, and he knows that if we would not do the humanitarian aid, well, the Biden administration and the world would shut us down from fighting this war immediately. So it's insane. Our closest ally, the world, forces us to give humanitarian aid that allows Hamas to continue killing us and let this war continue. But right now, I want to talk to you about something even more important. And that's the fact that this is a border that is closed. The border between Gaza and Egypt, right? Gazans, if they, on any other war zone, like, say, Ukraine or Syria, well, borders are allowed to be open so that those who want to escape the war zone can leave. And the world supported it. Millions of Ukrainian refugees taken all over the world. They left Ukraine. Millions of Syrian refugees. The world supported. Left Syria. Get them out of a war zone. Why leave them in a war zone to be killed in a war zone, right? To be in danger of being killed. But when it comes to Israel and our war with Gaza, even though the Gazans can simply leave Gaza to Egypt and then be able to go to any other Middle Eastern country and be safe and free from the war zone in Gaza, no. The world gives no attention whatsoever to forcing Egypt to open up the border. Egypt has it closed hermetically. They have soldiers and tanks to shoot any Arab Muslim in Gaza who tries to escape. Did you understand that? Do you hear any pressure from the world say, oh, Egypt, do not have soldiers there to shoot Gazans who are trying to escape the war zone in Gaza? No, there's no pressure whatsoever. We're 8 months into this war, and there is no pressure whatsoever from the Biden administration, from all the wonderful Western European governments, from the international organizations, from the United Nations. No pressure whatsoever. They want to ensure that the Arab Muslims in Gaza stay there to be human shields for Hamas. I understand that. The Biden administration is basically helping Hamas with its war strategy of allowing citizens, of allowing non-combatants to be in a war zone, be used by Hamas in the PR war, so that then America can pressure us if any civilians are hurt or killed. America's helping Hamas. America's helping Hamas's war strategy by not putting any pressure at all on Egypt. And it's right here. The Egyptian-Gaza border. The Gazans can leave. They can just walk through. Israel will let them go. Where's the world not pressuring Egypt? It shows you. The world uses these Arab Muslims in Gaza and Judea and Samaria as a pawn to destroy and weaken Israel. They don't care about the Arabs in Gaza. They say humanitarian aid, we care, we humanitarian aid. Yeah. No, if they truly cared, they would allow them to leave the war zone.
Avi Avila, Pulse of Israel. And I would actually say that the points that he raised there are very valid. How come that, as he mentioned, places like Syria and other parts of the world where we've been in war zones, they've been allowed, the innocent people, that if they want to leave, they've been allowed to leave to go to seek refuge in another country. And the country that's nearest to them, obviously, is Egypt.
So
why can't they go there?
Yeah, exactly. The Americans are not putting pressure on Egypt. So it's a game that Biden and his administration is playing against Israel to keep pressure up on Israel, not to give them a free pass. But also in the Camp David discussions and agreement with Jimmy Carter in 1978, Israel didn't want Gaza. Egypt didn't want Gaza, and Israel failed in that negotiation, and they basically were lumped with Gaza. Yeah. And it's never really been part of Israel. It's always been, you know, if you look at we're going back to the ancient history of Israel, that it was always a bit of a thorn in their side. So, you know, Gaza is an ancient land, you know, with the ancient, is, you know, the seat of the Philistines, isn't it? So, you know, why did Hadrian call it Philistina or Palestine, you know, to really rub it in the eyes of the Jewish people in AD, whenever it was, 165 or something. It was sort of in that region. So it was, again, it was a name to wind them up because it was the name of the Philistines and the Philistine cities. But in the modern world, it's made up. It's made up. So Egypt, the last thing they want is, as someone wrote actually this morning about the Muslim Brotherhood, the last thing they want is a load of radical Muslims. Apparently Hamza Yusuf wanted them all to come to Scotland and to do a Homes for Palestinians like the Homes for Ukraine. He's no longer the First Minister, but the point is, you know, Egypt didn't want them, but apparently, Scotland should have them. And I think that the danger is, even for Israel in this conflict, they don't know which is the terrorist and which is the civilian, because they're all dressed as civilians. And the same will be, we don't even know how to process immigrants over here. How are you going to process between who's a dangerous Palestinian and who is an innocent Palestinian? It's very difficult.
Okay, well, let's look at the second part of Pulse of Israel, which Avi actually demonstrates or talks about putting sanctions on Israeli protesters, blocking aid, etc., and some of what he has to say about Biden. So watch of this.
Well, the Biden administration now publicly said they want to punish and put sanctions on any Israeli who protests the trucks of humanitarian aid brought into Gaza, because there are so many Israelis who are so upset. All of Gaza is Hamas. It's not a terror organization. It's an Islamic ideology to murder Jews and destroy the Jewish state of Israel. The Hamas charter says it's not just about killing Jews and destroying Israel. It's about killing Jews all over the world. And it's an Islamic ideology. All of Gaza is Hamas. We all saw the videos of the Hamas non-combatants celebrating and looting and burning and some even amputating when Israeli and Jewish captives were brought into Gaza. You saw the masses of non-combatants celebrating and taking part in beating up our Jewish captives. They are all Hamas. We do not want them to get any aid. We want to finish this war so we can protect ourselves, ensure that we stop all rocket attacks. There's never again any October 7th massacre. And part of war is the civilian population, yes, pays a price until we get rid of the combatants, until we get rid of the army of terror. But the Biden administration wants to pressure Israelis who are protesting and trying to stop those trucks that are going to Hamas. Hamas takes all the aid. They sell it at high prices to even those non-combatants in Gaza. It's insane that the world ignores the true evil of Hamas and instead focuses on Israel as the bad guy. And with the Biden administration now even wanting to put sanctions on regular Joe Show Israelis, like you and me, regular people who are just protesting the immorality of the Biden administration and of international organizations who ignore the evil of Hamas, stop us from ending the evil of Hamas and ending this war as quickly as possible, and instead want to give aid to Hamas that allows them to continue killing us. Want to support our work, ensure our videos and podcasts get seen and heard by many more people? Click on the donate button every once in a while. Shalom, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I want to give thanks to Avi, and also those who want to support his work that he's doing there. Everybody needs some sort of financial support to be able to do all the research and be on the spot and travel, etc., and make the videos. So thank you, Avi. What do you make? There's quite a few points in there, Tim.
Yeah. The sort of overriding one for me is moral equivalence. So you've got to say, look, it's equal, even when it isn't equal. There's a Bible verse on that, by the way, that is fraudulent to say that. So, so the Israelis that are demonstrating about the aid that's going in that Hamas are taking, they are being sanctioned by the US administration, because if you're going to sanction Hamas terrorists, you've got to sanction Israelis who are demonstrating. And that's the virtue signaling, because it's an election year in America. Biden has been losing support from Muslims and pro-Palestinian lefties. And so that is probably the explanation for it. But I've never seen him before, but I think he's a really good presenter.
Yeah. It got interesting you should mention that, because you just triggered something that we shared this morning. Maybe our producer can actually find that where we've got a politician in the Labour Party who had an interesting meeting, to call it that. We don't want to comment too much because we're in a particular restricted period because of the elections coming up.
But it is in today's newspapers, and it's on the front page of the Daily Mail. So may I show you?
Yeah, please do.
Ta-da.
There you go.
Yeah, so the deputy leader of the Labour Party trying to sort of woo the Muslim vote in the UK.
Yeah, well, we got the clip ready. Should we have a look at that?
Yeah, why not?
We won't comment much, but I think silence is golden, especially on our part. Have a watch of this.
My voters were very upset with the Labour Party. I was with you and you saw me over the line. You supported me in seats that are similar to mine. People lost their seat. You were there for me, and I don't believe I could have done that without you. Now, I know that people are angry about what's happening in the Middle East, and I said live on TV, and I say to this day, if me resigning as an MP now would bring a ceasefire, I would do it. I would do it. If I could affect change, the only thing I've done, and Madge knows this, I got 3 British doctors out last week from Rafah who were stuck there. I worked hard day and night to get them out. They were stuck there because they've been helping. And I'm now working on getting aid in again because those doctors told me they went in with 10 suitcases and that lasts a week. Now they've been restricted to 2 suitcases. That won't last, that's nowhere near enough. So I promise you, the Labour Party, including myself, is doing everything we can because nobody wants to see. And nobody wants to see what's happening. And only last week, the Labour Party were supporting the ICC. The Conservatives didn't support the ICC. So at this general election on that issue, we can't affect anything when we're not in government. And I'll be honest with you, if Labour get into government, we are limited. I will be honest, I'm not going to promise you, because Biden, who's the US, who has way more influence, has only got limited influence in that. And Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all of these people, we are all working to stop what's happening at the moment. We want to see that. So I promise you that's what we want to see. And if Labour get into power, we will recognise Palestine. I will push not only to recognise, but there is nothing to recognise at the moment, sadly. It's decimated. We have to rebuild Palestine. We have to rebuild Gaza. That takes more than just recognising it. It takes resources. It takes infrastructure. It takes expertise. We need teachers. We need civil servants. We need all of the...
We lost it about recognising.
Tim, I know we have to be careful with what we're making comments on this at the moment, but you know one of the things that was obvious to me is the fact that her mode of dress was quite modest, which is not usual.
She's quite what's the word, loosely dressed when she's in Parliament, and you know, she flashes herself around quite a lot, and so obviously she was more respectful there with that audience. I can't believe that any self-respecting Muslim would be respecting what she had to say. But I also think it's a bigger issue than the general election. It's not a party political issue. You know, the demographics are working in favour. This is why Anjem Chowdhury, who we've interviewed on this channel, it's not that we don't shy away from interviewing. I don't want to sound like Angela Rayner. No. You know, start sweeping
like
my arms around.
Bakri, which I interviewed right at the beginning as well.
We've interviewed them. Now the point is, they are supremely confident that they're going to take this country, that we're weak, that we don't have moral fibre, and they've got a point, frankly, because we've abandoned our moral position. We've denigrated God.
Okay, but just picking on one thing, again, using the term, this is, we're going to rebuild Palestine.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, where is Palestine?
Well, this is the point I made earlier. We may as well come out and say it, because actually a lot of lives are being lost by peddling a fantasy of this place called Palestine. If you look at it, exactly where is it? Where are the borders? Where's the ancient, you know, connection with the land? It isn't there.
It's not there, is it?
You've got to just say it, I'm afraid.
It is, yeah. And sadly, that's the bottom line.
And it will help people. It will free Palestine from Hamas and from this false ideology, and it will free the children from it.
I would rather, the term we use there is we would free the Palestinians from Hamas.
That's
then
true.
People, the innocent people, might stand a chance to
point.
integrate as they were before. You know, it's just unfortunate that over the last 70-odd years, there's been this hatred towards the Jews, which again, I've said it time and time again, when you read the Hadith and You know, the Quran, you've got the teachings in there which are very clear about how they feel about the Jewish people, and also us as infidels, people who are not believers or followers in the Quran. You talk to the people like from ISIS, I know you might say, well, they're extremists, but they're following their religious writings, you know, at least they're true to the writings, you know. And
then the other thing I was going to say is there was a detailed survey of Muslim opinion recently, and we've done a program on it, on demand, you can find it, what Muslim attitudes are in the UK. I did a late show a couple of months ago. Now the point about it is that there's a high level of support for jihad in this country. That's a serious issue, and if you don't say it, then I would say we are being quite negligent, and as Christians we're not helping anyone if we just play a sort of lovey-dovey approach to something which is quite menacing.
Okay, let's have a look at something else here next. I think to show the general, I think, what was his title, his full title? I haven't got my notes on this.
Is this Hagari?
Yeah.
Hagari. So he's the Israeli IDF spokesman.
Yeah. When we watch this, we're going to stop it at a certain period because we want to actually let you have time to ingest what is actually being said by those who were in the area where there was the IDF, if you like, strike on the two Hamas leaders, which were actually targeted.
So that was the phone calls, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what was recorded. Yeah, by them. Yeah.
It's quite an eye opener, but we need to take time for you to take that in because it goes too quickly. But we'll go through as it is to the end of that particular part, and then we're going to pick up where I've actually frozen in time exactly what these two Palestinians were saying about what they thought really happened.
We are working to verify the cause of the fire. It is still too early to be determined. Even when we do find the cause of the fire that erupted, it won't make this situation any less tragic. We took a number of steps prior to the strike to avoid civilian casualties, aerial surveillance from above, using specific munitions aimed at minimizing collateral damage, delaying the attack in order to further assess expected civilian presence, and other means. We are also assessing footage documented by Gazans on the night of the strike, posted on social media, which appear to show secondary explosions, indicating that there may have been weapons in the area. Our signal intelligence intercepted some phone calls that reinforce this concern, raising the possibility that weapons stored in a nearby compound caught fire. Here is one of those phone calls.
بعدين قعدهم دخيرة لما صوت السلاح بدأ يتفجر وشمت هالمسار بتتبعتر ابو رفيق هذا ما مستودع سلاح باقي طلع يعني القوة اللي خلطوها اليهود مش قوية يعني صاروخ صغير لأنه مش فاحر جورة كبيرة وعندها صار يطلع توابع لتفجيرات كتير.
Right, now that's going a little fast for even us. So what I did when we played it this morning, I realized that we need to slow this down a little bit and pick it and pinpoint exactly what these Palestinians are talking about. Again, all this is picked up. Israel has the wherewithal, the technology to tap into people's phones and also to pick up any conversations and even the whereabouts of Hamas leaders, which were taken out, by the way, and pinpointed and recognized where they were and detected, and they were taken out by the Israeli army. But something happened that Israel seems to have got the blame for a rather much larger explosion than what they'd actually targeted. But this is, again, Palestinians who are actually having this conversation, and let's see what they say about the ammunition, first of all. Have a look at this. Were those explosions caused really by themselves? And this is what they were ours, they were saying. Okay, quite interesting.
That's the news, isn't it? I mean, the news should be, in the BBC and everywhere else, it was just a very small explosive targeted rocket. But the news is saying, oh, it's some American-made bomb. You know, that's the news. Yeah. But actually, it is, the news is that ammunition dump exploded. It's nothing to do with Israel.
Yeah. Well, we haven't got to the dump yet because it comes...
but the other point I was going to make is that how they just chat about it. I mean, wouldn't you be a bit shocked yourself?
Yes, no, that's true.
If you were there and you saw something.
But they were trying to analyse what had happened because they, as they quite rightly say, in a minute we're going to see this. But what is fascinating, we know how much Hamas have actually bagged as far as money is concerned, and Israel is in the tunnels has found many hundreds of thousands of dollars in there in bags, and this is Hamas making off with the money that comes from probably through UNRWA or whatever.
And all the humanitarian aid.
Yeah. But have a look at this, because this is something that the two Palestinians having this conversation actually recognise. Hey, hang a sec, what's all these bags of money that are flying around? Let's have a listen to this. So there you go, you know, recognising there were bags of money which were stored in, presumably, this, you know, sort of where all their ammunition is as well. So this was obviously nearby where these Hamas leaders were.
The other key thing we mentioned this morning is it wasn't in a safe zone for, you know, which the world's media said that they, they were bombing a refugee camp where everyone was sheltering.
Yeah, and I think it was 1.75 kilometers away from the safe zone.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Israelis hadn't gone into the safe zone, okay, which was supposedly recorded by other media groups. Okay, let's go to the next one. I find this also fascinating because it's talking about the Jewish bomb, really small, and this is what they are admitting to Palestinians. Yeah, because they created a very small hole, if you like, where they targeted the two Hamas leaders, and it said it was a very small amount of firepower. You know, so again, this is something which they're admitting was the case.
I mean, speculating because we don't know, but you know, they have these suicide bomb belts, you know, with buttons that they can trigger themselves. One of them could have triggered something which was a much larger explosion. But normally, if it's a large munition from a plane, it will create a massive crater. They said it was a small hole. They said it.
And again, they were admitting that the Israeli strike was using small ammunition. So it's very hard to get to the truth, isn't it? You know, I have to say. But we have to have at least an opportunity to actually come to the defence and for the fact of establishing the truth. You know, that's important, isn't it, really? Truth. Okay, the next one is, and afterwards, a lot of explosions. This is something which would have been you wouldn't have expected this if there was a small amount of ammunition to take out the two Hamas leaders, which Israel did. And then here we've got the Palestinians making comment again after those particular attacks and what happened next. Have a listen to this.
وعندها يطلع توابع لتفجيرات كثير.
So you might say, well, what is the question? Who is to blame for this secondary explosion? And as we say, going back to the conversation that we saw a few minutes ago by these two Palestinians that are having this conversation on the phone, that they recognize that Israel only had a small amount of ammunition in the first place, and they also recognized that there was a possibility, if more than a strong possibility, that there was a depot, if you like, hidden of other ammunition which belongs to the Palestinians or Hamas.
I've got a whole swathe of emails, but I know that you did an animation of the whole map of the area.
Yeah, well, let's do the emails first. Yeah, okay. Thank you for
So this is from Dory. A battle royal going on in London yesterday between Hamas and the police, some of whom were injured. But look out for next Saturday, 1st of March. March to Parliament Square, Christians, Jews, patriots, and Tommy Robinson showing his latest documentary. This is not a protest but a rally, but sadly the police is allowing a counter-protest from the woke and Hamas supporters. That's from Dory.
Dory, we've got some B-roll that
what she's talking about.
Have a look at the what was going on in London. You got the police obviously put to their test again. Large crowds, Palestinian supporters or supporters of Palestine or Palestinians, whatever they want to say, which is rather sad in the sense that they're not dealing with facts all the time. They're dealing with misinformation or not enough information.
This was the one where police were really being pushed back. We can't hear it, it's just kind of B-roll, but I tell you, what they were saying, just shouting and intimidating the police. They've got the Palestinian kafirs around their heads. But
were they running away, the police, or whatever?
I mean, what a waste of money. Why is this allowed on our streets?
And it's intimidating for those who are, particularly the Jewish communities, and I'd also say for anyone who wants to go into the West End or into that area of London. Every week on the weekend you have these demonstrations, and they're intimidating, to say the least. Okay.
The big ones are absolutely really intimidating. Thomas writes, it's horrendous how the children of Gaza are being indoctrinated with hate for the Jews. This is the work of Satan and his evil demons. I agree. Norma, if I'm allowed to say that. Norma says, I'm sure one of you know the answer to my question, which is what happened to all the money given to the Palestinian Authority that I heard went into Yasser Arafat's bank account in France. I was also told on the grapevine, as it were, the money remained there, as did his young widow, Sula, who conveniently married him close to the so-called Oslo Agreement, a Christian, I believe, question mark. That's exactly right. That's where the money went. So she's a millionaire, billionaire somewhere. And there was, up to £1 billion dollars was handed out by the EU, by the US, I think by the IMF or whatever.
That is still continuing today because Hamas leaders have amassed millions, if not billions of dollars again, living lavish lifestyles.
Which is what Fatah did. That's why Hamas became popular in Gaza, because there was so much corruption among the PA, Mahmoud Abbas and Saeb Erekat and all those people. They had their hands in the till and they all became very rich.
They could rebuild.
Like oligarchs.
They could rebuild Gaza, couldn't they?
Absolutely. Dave says, listening to those brainwashed kids was, to say the least, chilling. Why do you think that stations like the BBC won't broadcast that? Why won't the schools show that to our kids? Have they been brainwashed?
Very good point.
Ola Guerin, many years ago, did do one report. She did many hostile to Israel, but she did one report on the child soldiers of the Palestinians. And I can tell you, Hannah Nashwari, who's this very sort of articulate, educated at, Cheltenham Ladies College, Palestinian spokeswoman, she just couldn't answer it because the footage was all there. That's the only time I've seen the BBC show these terrorist training camps for children.
Yes.
I
showed them, I found the footage from Alon Bernstein, I think it was, who was the friend of another Palestinian cameraman, and I used to get, probably from, what's his name, Itamar Marcus as well, footage showing what was going on behind the scenes, where you had the children throwing rocks at the so-called Israeli tank brigade, and it looked like they're the weaker force, you know, with just rocks and stones, but they had the guns in their belts behind the back. Now, only the Palestinian cameraman could actually give us that information, and I saw lots of that sort of footage in that period in the late 90s.
It's very sophisticated propaganda, isn't it? Norma just says, apologies, I've put Palestinian Authority, I meant the PLO. When I visited Israel quite often years ago, it was not unusual in Tel Aviv to see a bus that had been blown to pieces and had been occupied by young children on their way to school. That was the PLO.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things Alon actually showed me, because he was the one that took the video of these buses that were continually being blown up by the Palestinians, and these are innocent Israelis, you know, children, people that were just going about their daily activities, get on a bus and within, you know, just immediately blown up, and really, really tragic. So, but people don't see that, and it hasn't been on the news, it hasn't been picked up by the main media.
We are victims, I'm sorry to say, of propaganda. Our state broadcaster is not honest on this issue.
Yeah, and do you know they have millions and billions? I mean, the BBC gets $4 billion a year in its taxes, or whatever you want to call it, you know, the license fees from us, but also another $2 billion apparently in you know, selling their programs as residuals and all of that they get from the likes of the rest of the world. So they have $6 billion a year. We have 1.5 million, maybe 2 million if we're lucky. I shouldn't use the term luck, but that's this poor little network, and he's trying to struggle. It's like David and Goliath in a way, but you know.
It is. We know what happened.
Yes, we do. You know.
Keith and Maureen, thank you for your film with the Palestinian children declaring the terrible things they would do to the Jews. Would the BBC or ITV newsrooms consider examining your footage with a view to showing these truths? ?
So, sorry.
He's basically saying exactly what we're saying. Would the BBC or ITV newsrooms consider examining your footage with a view to showing these truths?
Yeah, why not?
Would they consider it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, we actually mask the children's faces because obviously that's unfair to expose them as individuals, because they're only mouthpiece. In fact, I could hear a voice in the background just prompting them anyway, and although I don't speak that Palestinian or that language, but nevertheless, you know, the children were being used, and just as much as they've been used in the past, they've been used again. And it's always by, if you like, that ideology to destroy Israel and to take them off the face of the earth.
Just one more, because I know we want to show those maps, but exactly the same. These are people emailing in independently, but Lynn writes, I want to thank you for giving us this information this evening. The BBC and the international media are not showing this, are they? And I understand that the President of the Republic of Ireland says there is no such evidence against UNRWA. These are UNRWA schools where the children are being indoctrinated.
Yeah. Right, okay, so let's go to the other, what was it you wanted to cover?
There was this map that shows the scale.
I've shown it before, but I do want to just, for those who might be watching us for the first time or not seen this before, I put this little map together, and if we start with just a single map, just a JPEG that I've got here, I just wanted to show you the size of the Arab nations. I mean, you can see Israel is in red. And it's very, very tiny compared to all the Arab nations that are across the world.
It's got a chunk out of it from, you know, just to the right, which is the West Bank, so-called.
And you probably, if you zoomed in, you'd see Gaza. But nevertheless, the thing is, you can see the size of the Arab real estate straddles the two continents. But let's now look at this, what I put together, and I'll have to read it very quickly, and hopefully you can make some sense. At the bottom, you will see it's all about the Arab nations, and the top part is about little Israel. Let's have a quick look at this. Okay, again, looking at the total areas across the two continents, and you'll see coming up very soon, here we are, the Arab League member states cover over 5 million square miles and straddles the two continents, Africa. And there you go. The world Arab population is 464 million, just rounding them off. And then you've got the nation of Israel landmass is only 8,355 square miles compared to 5 million, okay? The world's Jewish population is 15.7 million. Jews in Israel is close to 6.9 million. And then we've got another irony here is that the Arab nations have most of the world's oil wealth, and Israel, if any, has so little. The Jews in Israel, as I say, are close to 6.9. But since 1901, 16 Arab Muslims have won Nobel Prize. And since 1966, 13 Israelis have won Nobel Prizes. And ironically, a Nobel Prize for peace. Can you believe that?
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. So just some
remember whether
stats
the
there.
Nobel brothers were Jewish. Someone may know that. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many ironies in this world.
But you see, over a shorter period of time, Israel has gained such notoriety in a positive sense.
Yeah,
let me say
exactly.
That, you know.
No, it's amazing. And Jordan, of course, was part of the Mandate of Palestine.
Yes.
That's why the Palestinians, even Arafat and King Hussein, recognized that they were Palestinians according to the Mandate of Palestine. Yeah. So it's just so many tragedies and missed opportunities. Yeah. Shall I read a few more emails? Eddie writes about Angela Rayner. I wonder if Angela Rayner would defend my right to draw a cartoon of the prophets. That would be interesting, Eddie. Be careful on that one, because it didn't work out well with others who did that. Yeah. Carol says, this is the spirit of evil in the adults who have taught their children. They have been breastfed hatred for the Jewish people. The work of the enemy doesn't want Jesus to return, hence no Israel, hence nowhere for Jesus to return to where he said he would. Israel, the Mount of Olives. Scripture is unfolding before our eyes. And Michael writes, I'm very concerned by the take-up and agreement that is occurring in the west of the Gaza Islamic situation. If you take the faith and emotion and love out of the Bible and the Quran, like a simple examination, the Quran comes out as the one to believe. It appeals to the conscience of a grown-up person. But as a God-loving Christian, I know it is false. Having believed all my life, I've learned that the gospel is true and Jesus is the bread of life. But without this background, like millions and millions of people, I would believe that the Quran is the final word of God. We are facing a great loss if the normal people of the world have their say. Needs digging into that. Yeah. I don't know whether you followed that.
Yes, I did. I would say that Jesus' words are the ones that actually come out to me as most profound and straighten the record. But the difference between Christianity and Islam is that Christ said to love your enemies and to pray for your enemies. And he also says to treat one another as you would like to be treated. Really, basically, this is the, love your neighbor as yourself. And when you do that, you won't kill them. You won't do things to harm them. You won't think of ways in which to take advantage of them. And you won't tell lies. Even Jesus said, and it's in the third person in Revelation, chapter 22, right at the very end, this is, you will not inherit the kingdom of God. Liars will not inherit the kingdom of God. We know that Islam, you're allowed to lie to your enemies, okay, etc., etc. And also in the Quran.
For the sake of honour, for the sake of your honour.
Yeah, but what honour? And you think that you're going to get 70 virgins when you get to heaven if you commit, if you're a shaheed and all of that. The thing is, the Bible says there is no marriage afterwards in the new heaven and new earth.
Yeah. So there's a few differences.
Very big differences.
Some say that you've emphasised, those who kill in the name of Jesus are not following the words of Jesus, which are love. Yeah. But those who kill in the name of Islam are following the teachings of Muhammad.
Yeah, but at least they're true to their word in that sense. But following the Hadith, it says very clearly, wherever you find a Jew behind a rock or whatever, kill him. Okay? I mean, there's no, love him or bring him into the fold or whatever. And the infidels, which is you and I, anyone who does not follow Islam and all of its teachings, all of it, will actually be put to death. They can put us to death.
So you've said it. Heather just says, thank you for both for telling the truth in a world full of lies. Lindsay says, I'm not sure who the lady was, but what she's promising shows a significant lack of understanding and integrity to Britain. Our rights and freedoms as Christians could be massively undermined under Labour. No government is perfect, and foreign policy is going to be a major voting point for the first time that I'm aware of in my voting decades. We need to bless Israel and not curse Israel.
That was Angela Rayner, if you want to know which lady she is. And obviously deputy leader of the Labour Party.
Exactly. David says the responses in London are too soft. Bring in the army, use water cannon. We don't have any water cannon.
Well, Boris Johnson, quite fortuitously, and
he bought them, but they joked about it. They laughed at him.
They did laugh at him, and they sold them for peanuts, and I think we'll be having to buy them back soon.
Yeah, the police are being humiliated. These are not protests; they are riots. Says David, and Laura says, great show tonight. You won't see any of this footage on mainstream TV. So many people unaware of what is really going on. Chilling the thoughts of the children should frighten the West to the bone. Strange how Gaza has run out of everything except rockets. No food or medicines, but plenty of rockets. Join the dots, people, I think.
Very good point, extremely.
And it's time to stand up, say Paul and Ruth, stand with Jesus. God bless you for your witness. And Susan just says, where are the brains of people like Angela Rayner who sat in a room full of Muslim men spouting drivel? Doesn't she realise that if they were in charge, she would be banned from leaving home without a male relative, let alone be working in Parliament? It's nuts. The world is out of touch with the truth.
Yeah, I was very tempted to comment on the Angela Rayner, but we're not allowed to because of the political situation with the ensuing elections. So, but Tim, bless you. I think we're doing, well, I can't mention what we're doing tomorrow morning because the thing is this could be repeated and it won't make sense. But thank you to all of you for letting us have our say tonight. God bless you. Pay for peace.